If you're interested in non-duality, spirituality, understanding your true nature, and unconditional happiness, this will be the most significant video for you, no matter where you are on this path. So you can watch this today, and in the next 5 years, come back to it and you go, oh my God, I can't believe I didn't understood this in that moment, but I understood this instead. Oh my gosh, tomorrow might be completely different as well. This is going to meet you on different levels of concessions, and it will make more sense to you over time, depending on where you're at on this path. But it will age well, I promise you that. The thing that I'd like to explore with you and help you understand is what you could say is that you can never claim an end of a spiritual path, because it's almost as though before the end of the path is met, the one that wanted it to end has already disappeared. So you'll never comprehend the ending of a path. You'll never have that moment. If you've had a moment where you feel like I'm done, that's called I'm done syndrome. It's just a part of the path where you thought you had greater insight than you used to have. And now you think that something has ended and the path has ended. And now you've got the thing that you didn't have. And now you got it. So now you're done. And this is something we have to notice, okay? And I'm going to explain why this happens and how the path truly ends, if we are to say there is an end at all to this path, which I don't agree that there actually is, but we'll see. So what you'll see here, and I'm just going to draw a diagram for you to help you understand. When we understand spiritual teachings, there is depths of esoteric understanding. So if this is the esoteric and this is common and normal. So for those who don't know, something esoteric basically just means something that is not widely known. And typically things that aren't widely known are things that less people are open to. So something esoteric is typically a truth that is less agreed upon, not because it's not true, but because it contradicts the current thing that's normal. So if the world says that the world is made of matter, that's the normal thing for the world, then the opposite of that would be esoteric because it's less agreed upon. The opposite of that being whatever you want to imagine that to be. Along this path, what we find is that concessions therefore have to be made when we go from higher esoteric, something less commonly agreed, down and down and down towards more commonly agreed. If you just speak from here to someone whose worldview is here, it won't be understood because you've just skipped on all of this. So you won't be able to communicate to that person if you go here. Now, let's put this into perspective with the spiritual teachings. Let's say that the most esoteric teaching is silence. Silence is great. Silence, if in the right moment, will be understood. And how beautiful is that? Silence being understood. Silence is the absence of something. How can you understand the absence of something? It's magic, right? But that's possible. We understand the absence of something. Well, just so happens that the true teaching, as it gets to a certain level, you will understand the absence of something. You'll understand the absence of your individuality. You'll understand the absence of the world. You'll understand the absence of anything. In fact, you'll understand the absence of absence. You'll understand the absence of existence and non-existence. I love Japan. This is my jacket that I bought in Japan, and this is my matcha that I bought in Japan. Oh, this is some good stuff. I regret not buying like 10 packs of this because I'm coming to the end of my bag right now. So it just so happens that we don't have to talk about esoteric stuff. We don't have to talk. In other words, we can just be silent. But it just so happens that for some reason we like to express ourselves. We just do that. It's just a part of our being. We express. What happens then is spiritual teachings will make concessions. That is what a spiritual teaching is. A spiritual teaching is literally a concession. So there's no such thing as a highest teaching because every teaching is a concession apart from silence. Silence isn't a teaching. It's a teaching in the sense that it's the only transcendent teaching that doesn't apply any form of language or anything at all, you see? But then if we want to apply language, because that teaching is not going to be receptive to what is common and normal, then we will have to apply a concession if we want to communicate that. Now, the question is, do we want to communicate that or not? We don't have to. You don't have to do this, you see? But if you do, well, you've got to apply a concession. Otherwise, if you cannot apply a concession, this is where it gets significant. If you cannot apply a concession, what that basically means is that you are not willing to communicate. That's totally fine. You don't have to do that. However, if you don't want to do that, but you're still trying to do it, it makes no sense. So think about the teachings that you know where they want to communicate to you, but they don't want to apply a concession. How does that make sense? Well, if you're going to open your mouth at all, you are by definition applying a concession. A concession, for those who don't know, it's a lesser truth that takes you to a higher truth. The only reason you wouldn't apply a concession is if you didn't want to. And if you didn't want to, then don't, you can't expect to communicate with a certain person, which is totally fine. However, if you're teaching something, the job is to be able to apply concessions. And what we find is that when we are incapable of applying a concession, sometimes it's because we don't want to, and that can come from wisdom. Sometimes it comes out of an inability to. That comes from a lack of wisdom. And in fact, it comes from a lack of compassion. Now, what that means is that, let's say that you have the capacity to understand the silence. And let's say that most people think that this is the absolute, this is the transcendent knowing. This is the place of the highest place you can be. What you find then is that the depth of your understanding isn't how high up you go, it's to what extent you are capable of going back to common and normal. The esoteric doesn't stay esoteric. The esoteric comes down to common and normal. So, what would give one the capacity to go from esoteric to common and normal? It would be compassion. Now, let me explain. Compassion? I don't want compassion. I want knowledge, Saja. What are you talking about? I've already got compassion. Before you click away, compassion is the highest form of intelligence. Why? Because compassion basically means that you have the capacity to both understand the highest teaching while also being able to make that common and normal. You're able to take esoteric into the basic day-to-day experience. Now, in order to have the capacity to do that, you have to have the capacity to embrace lesser truths while maintaining, we're being very poetic and metaphorical here, right? Don't take this too literally. You have to be maintaining the esoteric understanding while moving into lesser truths being the world. So now let me help you understand how this teaching kind of works. We have, first we believe that the world is made of matter. This is here. We believe that the world is made of matter, and we suffer. And what happens then is that we go through enough suffering that we wake up and then we start going to another level. This is spirituality. And in spirituality, we seek. So we thought the world was made of matter. Turns out it's not made of matter, but we don't quite know what it is yet. That's spirituality. In spirituality, we suffer. In the realm of matter, we suffer. And then in the spiritual dimension, we seek. It's the same thing. The world being made of a spiritual substance is the same belief as the world being made of a physical substance. The world's not made of a substance at all, right? So we go from matter to spirituality, suffering to seeking, and then all of a sudden, we still seek, but the seeking goes from material to, you could say, like practices. seeking, and then we go to knowledge, leads you to still seek happiness through objects, basically. But these objects now here, they're like crystals, they're like books, and here they're like practices, teachers, meditation, yoga, things like that. And the premise of that realm is that you still seek things. Then you realize you desire truth, and you realize happiness is the goal. Happiness and love. Most people think happiness and love exist like down here. They think that this is happiness and love stuff. It's not. And what happens then is that we try to take the esoteric and make this understanding, which is the absolute. The absolute is the place that 99, if not 100% of all the non-dual traditions are trying to help you recognize. They're trying to help you recognize that which is neither existent, non-existent, that which is completely transcendent of all possible conceptual understanding of it, which means you cannot understand it, but you can know it. And that knowing of it is the being of it. So light, for example, doesn't shine itself, doesn't light itself. Technically, it lights itself, but because it lights itself, technically it doesn't light itself. So if you think of it like this, imagine a sun in infinite space, right? This is the sun shining in infinite space, and there's nothing outside it. The sun this whole area will seem like darkness. All of this will seem dark. Why? Because in order for light to shine, or to appear to shine, to be visible, something has to be there. If there's nothing there, if you were to somehow be able to see what was going on when nothing was there, obviously, it would look dark, right? If you look into empty space, it's pitch black. But it's not pitch black. It is teeming with light. Light needs something to make it appear visible, which would be an object. But if there's no object, well, you're not going to see the light. But it doesn't mean it isn't there, you see? So the absolute is like this transcendent, it's the source of anything you could ever possibly imagine that could be, and that is. It is the source of existence. And we can give it names like consciousness, but in these nowadays, what I've noticed is that the word consciousness can be convoluted. Even the word consciousness is kind of being bastardized. And people are catching on to maybe consciousness not being the best word for it. I still think it's a great word. And if you understand it from the way that I've shared it, then you will understand it properly. But for the sake of this video, don't know who's going to see it, we're just going to call it the absolute. We're just going to give it some form of name, even though it cannot have one. And what happens then is that we recognize that the absolute is that which I am on an ultimate level, not the I am, the word, the sentence. It is that from which I derive the experience that I am. It's our being. And we somehow think this is the highest understanding, but it only seems like the highest understanding because we've gone from this, what is common and normal. And when we go from here to here, it literally appears to us as though, and this is when we first have a realization like this, it'll appear to us as though we have had a sacred revelation. This is a state of sacredness. There may even be frustration with the other levels. Once we go from here to here, there will be frustration on these levels because we had to suffer and seek, and none of this appeared to be the highest truth. So when we were going through these concessions, basically lesser truths that took you to a higher truth, we were seeking and suffering the entire time. And what appears to happen is that these mid layers of understanding seem wrong. They seem wrong. What is going on with that? That's crazy. There we go. That looked better. That was so funny. It's meant to autocorrect my spelling, not do whatever that was. Seem wrong. So I love how it did that when I'm writing seem wrong. So it makes all of these mid layers seem incorrect, like literally seem like they're not the teaching. And then we put whatever we learned to basically go from here, this stage, to this, we think that was the highest teaching. We think, it's this. And then this is where you will find teachers online sharing some type of glimpse that they've had. This is a glimpse. So when you go from this bit to this bit, or basically anywhere to this bit, however you went there, whatever you did, whatever happened, whatever you appeared to not do or do whatever, it will seem like that is the thing you've got to do now. I had someone in my community message me the other day, and you're welcome to join that, by the way. Someone messaged me and said, Saja, there's this person who's, doing these teachings, and finally I woke up and, they really helped me. And they did this exploration. I already knew the person and the exploration. And I think it's a very valid journey to take people through. And I've in necessary moments done that myself. But I also remember when I first understood that, when my teacher Rupert took me through an investigation like that, and I had this clarity where I was about here, you could say, and then I had the clarity of the absolute. I thought, this is like the highest teaching. Now I need to I want to share this with everyone, right? Why would I not want to share this with everyone? What you find then is that you have this new state, and the state is, I need to get the common and normal to get here. You see? You have this tendency, I now need to get this over to this. And then you will start every call, every person you meet, you have this urge, let me just help them see what they are without thoughts. Let me just help them see what they are without thinking. I really want them to see the nature of their being. You have this tendency that these people need to see this. And this now takes you to a new, you kind of get stuck in another level. I'm not going to put states to levels now. We're going to drop that. But basically, you'll come back here, roughly. And then, but you'll have access to your being for whatever reason with some type of practice. And now you have this urge to take people to this absolute. And then you perceive the absolute as the fundamental. And then the world then becomes this secondary thing. Like, this is secondary to the absolute. The absolute is my peace, my being. And the world is like, the world's just this illusion. It just appears, it takes shape, blah, blah, blah. And we lose the capacity to bring this to the normal. So see a first glimpse, typically recently after the glimpse, or for some people can go on for a long time, we will want to take the normal, the common and normal to the absolute. When the compassion, when you truly activate this understanding of the absolute, it actually includes everything. So think about it. First glimpse, oh my God, this was amazing. Sacred knowledge or non-sacred knowledge, or we'll basically try and position it in a way in our mind where the thing that I've just recognized, if we were on a path of, I used to think this was sacred, we'll flip it. It's now not sacred. And basically we'll position it in our mind so that we can pedal stool it, and we will want other people to experience that. The only reason you'd want other people to experience that is if you felt that there was something wrong with what they were experiencing to some degree. We basically have this urge, instead of going back to the common and normal, we want the common and normal to come to the absolute. This is what we call a lack of compassion. Let me show you why. The reason it's a lack of compassion is because in order to go from the esoteric or the absolute, you truly then understand that the entirety of this is also included, which means then that everything is of equal importance. So this state that you thought you found isn't the state or the thing or the thing. It makes everything important because because as reality, you create these realms. These realms are where the human experience are. This is where human experience is. Now, most people think that all of this means, or I guess you could say this section right here, most people think this means separation. No, doesn't mean separation. It means duality. Now, you don't have to, as an awakened person, right? Putting this in quotes, you don't have to step off your high horse of being reality and being in the absolute to go and communicate to the mere humans who still believe matter. You don't have to do that. You could stay in your cave or your house or your flat or wherever you are and not communicate. But if you want to communicate, you must therefore meet people on the level that they are on. Why would you want to do that? Well, again, you don't have to. However, as love and intelligence, you will naturally, if you want to communicate on the level of duality, apply concessions. Why? Because you are capable of expressing intelligence, which means you can now communicate on these levels without leaving, per se, the absolute. So now you're able to understand the level someone is on and not leave, so to speak, your understanding, which means compassion. It means we are able to give reality to duality without getting lost in separation. So duality is not supposed to disappear. The understanding of our true nature just simply means that we no longer experience separation. Separation isn't duality. Duality can appear to imply separation, and this is what tricks us and convinces us that we are temporary, limited, and finite, and what makes us believe that the world is separate, because it is dual, right? If I want to drink tea, I've got to pour it into a cup. If I can't perceive the space in the cup and the tea, I won't be pouring a cup of tea. So if I want to engage in that reality, it's very cold now, I will have to engage with duality. And if I want to engage in conversations, I must engage in concessions. So what we find is that the true teaching ends in love and compassion. If it doesn't end in love and compassion, it's not the teaching, because the only way that we would somehow communicate with others without applying concessions is if we did not have the capacity to apply a concession. And if we don't have the capacity to apply a concession, it's the same on a material level. To understand this rationally, it is as though we are able to walk into anybody's house, right? We can. If the door's open, all we've got to do is open it unlocked. We could walk in and steal things, right? But why don't we do that? Because there's a level of respect. It's also possible that if you come into my flat and I say, oh, sorry, do you mind taking your shoes off? You don't have to take your shoes off. You could say, no, I don't want to take my shoes off. And you could walk around my flat with your shoes on. But the problem is that if you do that, I'm going to see you as disrespectful because you're disobeying a reality and a boundary that I've created for myself and for my experience. And you are opting out of that, which means you are opting out of communication with me, which means that you do not have the capacity to understand my reality. And if you don't have the capacity to understand or to go into or enter my reality where I don't have shoes on in my flat, then we will no longer have relationship. You see? I would say, sorry, I don't want you here. You don't respect me, right? Because that's, we'd use an example here. That's integrity. So in the same way, when we are communicating with the world, we give the world that same respect. We give the world the respect it deserves on the level that it's on. And to the extent and depth of our understanding is to the extent and depth that we're able to take something that would be esoteric into the common and normal. So something that has high viscosity, viscosity means the rate of spread, to which a liquid can spread, but we're applying this to a teaching that usually doesn't spread that much is able to spread that much because you are now able to express high viscosity at low viscosity. You're able to express high levels of esoteric understanding into lower or more common levels of experience. They're not lower levels, but you understand what I mean. More common levels of experience. If you don't do that, it's because of a lack of compassion, because a lack of compassion means I do not have the capacity to go there, nor do I want to. Well, you don't have to, but if you're living in the world of experience and you do want to communicate, it is a necessary part of communication. So what we find is that when the path doesn't end in this love and understanding and compassion, compassion is the intelligence of love, and therefore compassion is the highest level of intelligence. It means that we are able to take the highest thing and to bring it into the common and normal. And if we don't have the capacity for that, it's because something is inhibiting us from moving forward. What would that be? It would just be another part of the path that we are yet to see. You see? So the path doesn't just go from up. It doesn't go up or down. It's within itself. It doesn't really go in higher levels. The absolute isn't just up here and it's esoteric and then blah, blah, blah. Everything is completely coherent with itself. So everything has importance. The ultimate understanding is love everything, give reality to whatever level that we want without getting lost in it. That's what love and compassion is. Compassion is simply the intelligence to embrace another person's reality or another reality that might be illusory with the power to not get lost in it. This is the most highest sacred level of intelligence. Think about what that means. That means complete freedom, because it means no matter what, nothing can limit us. Do you see how this level of intelligence is therefore integrated on more and more levels as we go? So that levels, you're never going to have that uprooted in one. It's not just going to completely go. You're not going to completely understand that from one glimpse. It means that freedom is an ever perpetuating, moving process of evolution. It basically means freedom can get more and more free on the level of experience. So whereas we experience an ultimate freedom, it doesn't stop freedom getting more and more free on the level of experience, which means the path becomes not about how high am I going to get or what recognition am I going to have. It becomes how good are you at being an adventurer, which means the capacity to embrace the unknown, to embrace the complete new. How good are you at completely surrendering to the entirety of your experience? That's what the adventurer is. The adventurer does not know, doesn't need to know. The adventurer just has fun. And it has fun in any version of reality. Meaning, if someone wants to come and talk to me about the weather, if someone wants to come and complain about their boyfriend, if someone wants to come and, or if someone wants to come and talk to me on a level of, Saja, what's the best meditation practice? We have capacity to mold to any form of experience. We don't need to do this, but this is, if you're catching my drift, something we find fun, something that we enjoy. Now, you don't have to have these conversations. You can just be in the absolute. If that is what you would like to do, well, then there's plenty of caves. There's plenty of places that you can stay. I'm being facetious. to enjoy that time. But if you want to live in the world, then, oh, interesting. Well, you're opting in then for duality. You're opting in. Don't have to, but you are. If you want to do that. Means you must then speak to people with the respect that they are also an individual. Yes, you know they're not an individual. You know reality. You know that this, whatever this little pen thing is not really a pen. But you have capacity to experience the reality of time and space without getting lost in the reality of time and space. You have the capacity to give respect to another individual, even though you know they're not really an individual. And you can enjoy the parameters and the experience of that reality, even though it is an illusion. And that's when we find everything is real. This is the biggest thing. Everything is real. Everything deserves love. The picture that your daughter paints at 3 years old and she wants to show you the amazing thing that she's drawn, it's the best picture in the world. It's not, yeah, other people aren't going to put that picture in the French museums, but you treat it as such. Why? Because you love it, right? Because you love. And you don't need something to be an objective masterpiece and an agreed reality in order to embrace it as real. You have true power. And this is true love and true intelligence, true compassion. So if the path doesn't end in that capacity, if the path denies lesser truths, if the path says, no, ignore every other teaching because this was all wrong and I did this for so many years and it was wrong for me, well, that's not, in my point of view, the most effective teaching, you see? In fact, it's not a teaching. This is the thing to see. It's a level of understanding expressed through a misunderstanding, which makes it some part of the path that we will now emigrate from. So if you see these types of things, just be careful, you see? So all this to say, there's no need to put yourself on levels because ultimately they're all important. And whereas I'm saying right now that there's a level to watch out for, this is also a concession being applied to something that will bring you to a greater truth. And that is what we'll find throughout. If anyone speaks, they're applying a concession. And if they don't think they are, then it's obviously incorrect, right? Because you have to imply a concession in order to speak, because you have to imply the fact that there is another individual listening. So to wrap this up, the end of the path, there isn't one. The path was never a path to begin with. And what we find is that we eventually access a deep understanding for love and compassion. Compassion is the intelligence that allows us to embrace any form of illusion or reality. Technically, all realities are illusory and real, depending on which perspective. And we therefore have the capacity to embrace it all. And therefore, we have the capacity to apply concessions. And therefore, we have the love and capacity to not need to change people, to not need to help people, but just to be there, open, ready for when people are ready to ask any form of inquiry. So we're no longer trying to take the abnormal, take the normal to the esoteric. We take the esoteric to the normal. I have a community where I actually show people how to do this, and I'm creating an academy soon if you'd like to join. The link is in the description. I do free calls every week. So I'd love to see you there if you'd like to be there. Have an amazing day, guys. Take care.